All right, everybody, welcome back. It's Friday, and there's been a lot going on, a lot happening. I'm actually in DC right now, so we're actually pre-recording this. We're doing this a day early, and you're getting the most cutting edge of what just happened here in DC and what the Trump administration is now doing to move forward against weaponization, leftover damage from the Biden administration. I'm going to share some of that with you today. Right Side Rebel is going to be joining us today, talking about no peace for animals. You know, all the left really does, they just kind of ruin everything. Even when they think they're doing something good, to save animal lives, they can't even do that right. Okay. They can't do anything right. Case in point, look at Colorado. We've got the wolves killing all of the livestock, killing all of the deer and the elk, but we need the wolves that were brought in from Canada. Who knows why? We don't have any idea, but all the other animals are dying when all we wanted to do was save new wolves. They just can't do anything right. And then, of course, country music star Claire Dunn is going to be joining us also to weigh in, as she serves as an ambassador for the beef industry here in America. She was featured at CPAC actually this year, talking about what critical mass we are in with the beef industry in America. So she's going to be joining us in just a little bit as well. So we've got a great conversation for you guys today. Things that really matter. I mean, who all eats beef? Everybody eats beef, unless if you have gotten the tick that prevents you from eating meat. That could be you. But you know what? There's actually help on the horizon for those of you who have been targeted by nefarious, dark underbelly, deep state entities. And you will soon be able to eat beef again. So do not worry. We'll get there. We're going to get there. I have learned so much in this particular visit to Washington, D.C., but I want to share just a little bit. I just got back actually, and I'm kind of digesting it still, even now, what just happened at this press conference and everybody that was there, and the camaraderie and the agreed mutual understanding that something must be done about the weaponization of the Biden administration, specifically against parents in the United States. Now, this goes back to the NASB memo that was sent to Merrick Garland via Viola Garcia of state of Texas. She wrote this memo, gave it to the NASB, where she requested that parents who were being subversive to the goals of the school boards via the National Association of School Board Members and the National Association of Teachers Association also. So these unions, right? Any parents who are being who would not subordinate themselves to these unions' demands over our children to abuse them. You might remember lots of abuse going on during the COVID era, abuse in exchange for ESSER funds. You might remember that. They got paid to mask our kids, to silence them, to isolate them, to punish them, all for the sake of COVID, right? All for the sake of COVID. And any parents who were standing against that and were showing up at these school board meetings, any parents who were calling out the comprehensive sex education curriculum that made a massive sweep across this country, both in red and blue states alike, you may have missed it. And if you missed it, these unions, these national unions, wanted you to be labeled a domestic terrorist and for the full weight of the Patriot Act to be used against you. And just a few days after this memo was released by Merrick Garland, and a hotline, a snitch line, was set up for teachers and administrators across the country to call into to report you, mom and dad, they came out with a public apology, but it didn't matter because the damage was done. And those of us who were on the receiving end of the brutality of the Biden administration and their pursuit to get parents out of the way so that they could continue to indoctrinate and abuse your child, whether you liked it or not. That full force, that weight of government, that thumb on the scale across this country, it was effectively a given. There was going to be nobody to stop it. And anyone who did, anyone who tried, they were punished. So that was the intention of the press conference today, was to talk about exactly what the Biden administration did, to go over some of the evidence that they're bringing forward now, where literally an attorney within the DOJ, when this memo first came through the office of the DOJ, when it first came through the desk and the attorneys are all looking at it to see how they can wage war against MAGA parents, literally an attorney, Stanley Woodward, who was third in command under the Trump administration DOJ in the first administration, and he's presently at the DOJ now. He said they have an email literally where one of the inside attorneys says, effectively, we can just call this an anti-MAGA movement. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. the trouble is that this is not a right issue. This is not a conservative issue. This is truly an American issue, because I would never sanction the abuse of people who don't think like me by the Trump administration either. Now, we have laws in our country that you can't sexualize children. You can't molest children. You can't sexually assault children. You can't take other people's children. You can't violate parental rights. Those things are lawful, and we need to support and defend those. But that's not what we were talking about with the Biden administration. They were coming against us for us wanting to defend and protect the innocence of our children, and they made that criminal. So there was a lot of conversation about how to protect parents in the future. Linda McMahon gave such a compelling speech as the Secretary of the Department of Education. She's working in full tandem with the DOJ. And what they will continue to do is to investigate. Once they investigate and find abuses, they turn that over to the DOJ. And Attorney General Harmeet Dillon was there. She talked about her role in education privately, or, to the group that was there, not necessarily during the panel, but they're going to be taking a very keen interest from here on in the education part of this across the country, and the abuses in the education departments across the country. And I was very excited to hear that Jefferson County, Colorado, the Department of Education has finished their review of all of the sanctioned abuses by Jefferson County administrators, the sanctioned sexual assaults, the grooming, the trans behavior, the separation of parents of children from their parents, all of this insane stuff that has gone on in Jefferson County. They wrapped up their investigation and have now referred it, and are in the process of referring it to the DOJ. So you're going to see a lot more henceforward, moving forward, and it has been in play, actually. It's like finally this was the button that was pushed for the public to understand what's going on. They've been doing the work for the last year of compiling all of this information. Remember, the Biden administration was not willing to turn over emails. They were not willing to turn over anything, resources that were coming from any of the unions or teachers across the country, administrators. They weren't willing to give any of that information up in order for the DOJ to be able to figure out who initiated the attack and assault on parents across the country. So keep that in mind. So Linda McMahon did a fabulous job laying out what they are doing in the DOE. Kash Patel spoke out and reminded us, I did not know this, and I'm very, very glad to report this. Every single agent, I wrote it down. I don't want to misrepeat it. Every single agent that was involved in the, right when I needed it, I can't find it. Okay. Every agent that was involved in the scandal against the Catholics, that letter that went out to prosecute all the Catholics, every single agent who was involved in that has been fired from the FBI. Other agents have been put on notice, are under investigation in other investigations and inquiries surrounding weaponization of other groups. As you know, the last administration was extremely anti-Christian, and it's unbelievable to see the lengths to which that administration went to persecute Christians, and declare them domestic terrorists. People like me, people like you. So every one of them have been fired, and many again are under investigation right now. This is a bureaucracy. This is what they've been talking about. The federal government is a massive bureaucracy, and there is so much that must be done in order to shed a lot of those layers that protect the bureaucracy. They're not protecting America. They're not protecting the Constitution. They're protecting themselves and the future of the institution. The institution means more to them than all of that. And who is them? Those who are lifers, those who've been here forever, and it's been their charge to protect and defend this entity rather than the Constitution. It's safe to say many of them have gotten very off track, very off track. Now, there's redemption. There's redemption, and I hope many of them will take it and look back to the Constitution and what their original role was in service to the people of America through the federal government. But we'll have to see. So Kash did an excellent job laying out what they've done, things I did not know, and I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention to this stuff, and I did not know that they had taken those actions, because that's been the number one complaint for Kash and his role as the director of the FBI was, where's all the firings? Why are these people still working for you who just did what they were told? And he mentioned that also, that will not be an excuse. You cannot just say, I was doing what I was told. That is so Nuremberg, you guys. That's ordinary men. The final solution carried out by the Polish police officers. That's what they said. I was just doing what I was told. It will not be an excuse anymore, and apparently it hasn't been. So that was cited very clearly. Also, of course, we had Todd Blanche, General Todd Blanche, and there was a lot to be said about the role that he's played in the last 4 years. And it is true. And I think people need to be reminded, a lot of people just scattered. Think about the work that each of you who are watching, you were doing in your own private sector, and you looked around and all your friends were gone once the government came for you. I can personally attest to that. Even family who told me, we don't want to see you for a while. Like somehow it was a disease and it was going to rub off on them. A lot of us went through that, and that's okay. Obviously the fight isn't for everybody, and that's okay, but it happened nonetheless, and it happened in every sector. And Todd Blanche was really the last man standing defending President Trump for the last 4 years when everybody else scattered and decided it wasn't worth the risk. Because I don't know if you remember, I forget this, like how bad it was looking for President Trump, how bad they wanted to put that guy in jail. He's got his mugshot. I mean, they wanted to throw this man in jail, in prison, for standing up for we the people. And although there are decisions that we don't understand right now, that we're curious about and trying to figure out what is going on, please remember that there hasn't been anyone fighting harder for us than President Trump. This is this part here, this weaponization against the average American person by government, by federal government, is a priority for President Trump. And, I'm not like a Trump singer. I'm looking at what's actually being done. And today was a bit relieving to know that there's going to be guardrails put up so that no matter who you are, if you're a Democrat or Republican or in between, independent, whatever, your government's not going to be able to go to war against you because they don't like your ideas. They don't like you standing up for your kids. They don't like you protecting what's normal, neutral, and natural. That was made very evident at this press conference. I'm very excited. I want to be a part of that. We're going to be working to put some things forward for them that hopefully they will adopt, to help those who have been persecuted by their government, who do need to have some sort of restoration. Some sort of, something's got to happen. Something's got to be made right. And so we're excited to work with them on that. Moms for America was representing today at that meeting. And then also Vance. Gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't remember his name. Anyway, on behalf of the White House, wonderful. But the real showstopper today was definitely the Loudoun County father, Scott Smith. If you don't know who that is, you need to look him up. And he gave his testimony. It was brutal. It was just brutal. It wasn't failures of government. It was purposeful abuse of government towards their citizens. And the impotence that you experience as a man, not being able to defend your child, defend your family, and then to all of a sudden be plastered as the villain all across the country for standing up for your daughter who's been essayed by a boy pretending to be a girl in your girl's locker room. It was so unfathomable. It was just unbelievable. His testimony was incredible, and a great reminder to how low the Biden administration swooped, how dark they were willing to go. So when I see people like Candace Owens interviewing Hunter Biden, and they're like, we're not talking about your dad. We need to keep talking about his dad, the former president of the United States, who allowed this disgusting, abhorrent behavior to go on across the country. And it sullied and it soiled every agency in our country. Do you trust the CIA? No, but we probably never should have. Do you trust the FBI? No, I don't. Do you trust any area of your government? You never should. But this is a new layer that they created, a whole new level of distrust where it was almost militant by the citizens at the end of it, where we're like, we're not standing for any of this stuff. So all in all, just a quick review on that. I'll be giving more information as I kind of break down everything that happened, and I'll post on X about it also. And I'm going to post our plan also of restoration for a lot of these families that have really had their lives turned upside down, my family being one of those. And just because you've made lemonade, I want to be clear about this too, just because you've made lemonade out of lemons does not absolve the government of their obvious and total need for accountability. Just because you've been able to go on and figure out something new with your life, because you're resilient, because you know that in spite of what darkness and evil does, God has a plan for you and he's going to help you get where you need to go. Just because you've been able to do that, I think of my good friend, Dr. Julie Pickering of the great state of Texas School Board. That woman has been to hell and back because of the Biden administration and because of the left-wing lunatics coming out of her district. Viola Garcia is the one who drafted that NASB document, that memo, and she was in Julie's district. and just created a living hell for everybody. Not just Julie, but everybody, but specifically the personal cost to people like Dr. Pickering. It's just you can't just say thanks for telling me and sharing that with me. I hope things go well. Things are going to go well because we're resilient and this is America. It's the greatest country in the whole world. And if you have a will to accomplish something, you can do it. But that is no reason not to hold the government accountable for the abuses that they not only sanctioned, but they fostered, they created, they administered, they piled it on, man. Don't forget Arctic Frost and all of the conservative voices that the federal government went after and silenced. Arctic Frost was a literal attack. Mike Lindell, My Pillow, his company is the only company that they targeted and literally tried to destroy the government because he wouldn't shut up about elections, you know? Unconscionable actions by the Biden administration under Joe Biden. And they need to be held accountable. And I just, man, you just want to get on with your life, but then government doesn't allow you to do it. So there'll be more to come. Great time today. Great meeting so many wonderful people who have stood up to government and have won and are winning and are not going to allow this to go on. It doesn't matter that it was 4 years ago. It's still going to continue to happen. It is still happening across the country in Democrat-controlled states like Colorado and like the state we're going to talk about in just a moment here, because they're crazy. They're crazy. They're run by people who are mentally insane, who belong in institutions, but instead they're running the state. And there's no place more evident that you're going to be able to see this than in Oregon. And my great friend, my guest coming on to talk to us about what's happening there. There will be no peace for animals, but this peace initiative, this legislation that's been brought forward that will literally ban fishing, hunting, slaughtering of any beef. It is absolutely insane. I can't really wrap my mind around this. Serena with Right Side Rebel, thank you so much for being with us. You got to help us make sense of these crazies. I can't. They're insane. They're running everything. They should be in the asylum, but they've got the wheels. I don't get it. Oh, hang on. Are you muted? Make sure your audio. 1 second. We're just checking sound real fast. Hang on. So what is these crazies? What is happening there?
I can't make sense of it myself. I was able to find the lead petitioner of this and I questioned him into oblivion. But here's the thing. I didn't even think they would get enough signatures to put on our November ballot, but they managed to do that. But here's the thing. They are framing it as, oh, protect animals in Oregon. It's against animal cruelty. It's against animal experimentation. That's how they're framing it. So I walked up to them and first thing I noticed, back of the clipboard is protect animals in Oregon. And I'm like, so I told him, I'm like, so I see that you have a sign that says protect animals in Oregon, but don't you think this is a little misleading? This goes way beyond that. Oregon, we have over 35,000 farmers and ranchers that will go out of business. And these are farmers and ranchers that have been in the business for decades, they pass down to generations. So how are you going to tell all these people to get a new job after it's been in the family for generations? How they have built stuff up. We have the Tillamook Creamery out here. So it's like, and that's a very popular one. And then not only that, but it would pretty much take rodeo out. It bans lines against rodeo. You won't even be able to set up rat traps in your restaurant. They want to do, and here's where I question him some more. They want to do birth control boxes to minimize the overpopulation. And then, you could set traps, but they can't be the ones that killed the rodents, And so you would just release them back out.
Okay. I just want to be clear. You don't get to kill animals, but they get to kill animals. I just want to make sure I got that right.
No one gets to kill animals. No. And you can't even, if an animal is going after your livestock or your animals, you can't even kill that unless it's self-defense on you.
Their policies aren't reasonable. They don't have any common sense about them. But we've experienced a little bit of this in Colorado. So when you're talking about they want to do birth control initiatives, essentially that will take out potential life. they're going to minimize the populations of whatever it is that they're deciding. We experienced that in Colorado. They wanted to bring wolves in. Wolves have decimated other populations of animals. Like, it never makes sense, even though they're supposed to be pro animal, pro animals have more rights and more opportunity for life than humans do in these Democrat controlled states. But it just doesn't end up making any sense. Tillamook is my favorite brand actually for cheese, by the way. I love, love, love Tillamook. It's so good. And so dairy is going to be affected, hunting, fishing. What are the ranchers doing right now? Because people don't realize how actually conservative the majority of Oregon is. It just has the one or two liberal cities that make all the rules for everybody and shake everything down. But what are the ranchers doing about this? They didn't think it would make it on the ballot, but it's here. Now what?
So everyone's everyone, as this has got put on the ballot, you have more ranchers and farmers coming out and saying something, making comments. I mean, even our governor has came out and made a comment. And I don't think with the comment she made, I don't think that she fully I don't think she backs this up, but I also don't think she's for it because, more money in her pocket, right? Anything that puts more money in her pocket. So,
that's a great point to speak to. How are they going to pay for all the welfare projects they do if they don't have that tax money coming in?
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you.
No? Oh, I can hear you really, really good. Okay, 1 second. So it's kind of crazy about these leftists, the way that they operate. They do need the tax revenue. So although they're trying to squash all the business, how are they going to get around that? Has there been any estimations on what the cost of all of the food costs, all of that marketing, all that production, what's that going to do to the state of Oregon?
So, I mean, who's going to have to pick up that slack? It's the taxpayers that are going to have to pick up that slack because, I mean, I can't remember exact numbers right now, but you got the beef industry just bringing in over millions of dollars, So who's going to have to pick up that slack? Not to mention, 45 to 55% of hunting and fishing licenses do go to Oregon's Fish and Wildlife. So those take over that takes over the hatchery and everything. So what are you going to do when you cut half of their stream, it's quite ridiculous because they have the hatcheries, they prevent the disease outbreaks, they prevent overpopulation, the hunting prevents overpopulation. It goes into a whole economic burial, that they're destroying Oregon with this. But here's the thing, sorry.
Yeah, no, they're destroying Oregon, the people of Oregon, by claiming they're passing an anti-cruelty, an anti-animal cruelty bill. It's so crazy. The acronym People for the Elimination of Animal Cruelty Exemptions. Can you speak to, do you know anything about these people that brought this bill forward initially anyway, brought this ballot forward?
So none of them have lived on a ranch or a farm or have even grown up in that life. Right. I asked that while I was interviewing because I didn't think they would, because anyone who was raised this way knows that we're not doing anything that's cruel. We're living. God gave us this earth and he gave us animals that we're supposed to feed from. The cows bring us dairy, it brings us meat. We won't even be able to go get eggs from the chicken coop and eat them.
What?
And yes.
That's how far this bill goes?
Yes. Yeah. We won't even be able to have eggs. So we have to import dairy, eggs, meat. The butchers, unless they import their meat out of business, if we want meat, we have to import it. And they're trying to say that, if you import meat from countries like China, most of our stuff is from China. If you import meat from them, then it's actually going to be cheaper. No, it's not. I don't know what thought process makes you think that that's going to be cheaper for us. That's not how it works. So you have to also add on the fee that you're shipping it so far away. And it's quite ridiculous. You won't be able to do pest control in your home. So if you have termites, just I guess say goodbye to your home,
Oh my gosh. The levels that they go to, the levels that the left goes to establish control over humanity. And don't you think that's what this is really about? I mean,
Yes.
if a population can't feed themselves, if you have no way of taking care of the basic, most basic need of your family, which is food, and the government controls all facets of that, effectively, you're living under a dictatorship or communism. I mean, it's really the same thing in Oregon. It's been that way progressively. It looks like there's going to be a lot of lawsuits if this does somehow make it into your legislature for real, and it really does actually get passed. Has there been any talk about that? Is this going to be brought forward by ranchers? Who's spending the most money trying to defeat this bill right now?
Honestly, I have no idea. Everyone's speaking out about this equally. Everyone's mad. Everyone's angry at this bill. Everyone's screaming about this bill. And honestly, if this gets passed in November, there's going to be war in Oregon, and it's going to be the rednecks and the ranchers and the farmers that are going to win. Because I mean, we all eat meat. I mean, I've talked to some Democrats that are even against this bill. So it's like we all eat meat. We all need meat to survive. I'm
Yeah.
not going to eat some 3D made or tofu or whatever they eat, you know? But on their
Yes.
side, they want to push this to the rest of America. They're like, eventually, we would like to push this nationwide. And we know that it's going to take a while for people to be ready. People aren't ever going to be ready.
Mm.
Like,
No,
but they're trying
they're
to.
they're not. But Serena, where does this bio weapon that they've been unleashing, these ticks that give you whatever, disease that you become allergic to meat? I mean, it kind of seems like it's all in concert together.
No, it really does. And so this is what we've been seeing for years. We've been seeing the Democrats put things in play for years. I mean, look at January 6th, you know. There's so many ways that the Democrats have ruined it. And here's, for example, we passed Measure 110 that would decriminalize drugs here in Oregon. And we were being told by our former Democrat governor, Kate Brown, that, oh, hey, it would be an automatic go to rehab. And here we are, something years later, not even 10 years later, we have a peak in drug and homeless usage. I mean, drug usage and homelessness. You know, we have a peak. We're at like the highest peak right now. And then, our governor is over here pretending like everything's fine. I'm fixing it. No, that's not the deal. You're making it worse. You're not doing anything to get them off the streets. You're encouraging the drug usage. And we're actively seeing that, but no one's changing it, not even our governor, because it lands more money in their pockets. You get minimum number of people in these shelters.
Yeah.
In these shelters, and where does the rest of that money go to? Back to
Oh.
politicians. So guaranteed they're going to
Yeah.
do the same thing with this stupid bill. And we're actively there's another story I just covered. They passed Senate Bill 1008, which gives anyone convicted as a minor a second look after a minimum of 15 years in prison. So even if you give a life sentence, which I just covered a story about, a father, he had a daughter who, she was brutally raped and murdered. And her killer went behind bars, was given 2 consecutive life sentences. And just last week, he had a release hearing and he was ready to be released back to our community. This has been going on since 2019. So this is what Democrats are doing. They are doing, enabling.
I would just add, not to interrupt you, but Serena, had it not been for you and your coverage of that story, that man would have been released back into the public to murder and kill another young woman. So good on you for bringing that story to the public and making sure that that everybody knew what the government was about to do and protecting that family. Thank you for doing that. I mean, it's just tremendous. People think it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if we talk about these things, but actually it really does. And that's why they try so hard to silence this conversation because it really makes a difference. And so had you not been there and you had not been willing to talk about it, probably a violent deviant would be out there murdering girls again. So,
well, here's this has been enabled since 2019. So I truly think if we did not get as many eyes on this and threw a fit about it as we did, I think they would have released him. But this has been going on since 2019. There was 77 on the list to get released protected by that bill this month. So how many have actually, and we've heard stories about someone getting released and they went on a killing spree all over again. So that was my point. These Democrats are putting Senate bills and, things in place, to save their butt, but it's completely destroying the state as a whole and the community as a whole in the future. So here we are, this was in 2019, we're in 2026. Look at that span of years, and the crime rate in Oregon has increased. So what's going to happen when we put this IP 28 bill in place? You're going to.
Oh yeah. They're gonna create criminals out of the good people who just try to feed their families. It's absolutely crazy.
Exactly.
Serena, thank you so much for being with us. Right Side Rebel, go check her out on X, follow her, and incredible, great content. Thank you so much. And hopefully we're going to be doing more stories together and covering more stuff here with you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's true. This is their goal. So that's a basic need. I need to feed my family. And you're going to be criminalized now if you go fish. If you go cast your little fishing pole into the water and you try to catch yourself a fish, you are going to become the new criminal. Do not worry about the rapists and the murderers in Oregon, guys. We are going to go after these fishermen and these egg gatherers, these hunters and these gatherers. They are going to get it. Claire Dunn probably knows better than anyone how stupid liberals can be. And especially when it comes to meat and being able to take care of yourself, what the ultimate agenda is surrounding this whole thing. You just heard all that nonsense and what's going on in Oregon. You live in Colorado, so you see loads of just unspeakable and unbelievable actions all the time. What's the ultimate goal, Claire? What are they trying to do?
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people on our side miss, and the general population, is that it's never about the animal's welfare. The environmentalists in this issue in Oregon and in Colorado, they all are wannabe oligarchs, and they use animals, they use the law to do their bidding and try to take land away. This is about acquiring land. This is about locking up land for themselves and for their elite friends. And that's what most of these environmentalists believe. They believe that human beings are the root of all evil. Yes, there are bad ones out there, but the vast majority of people on this earth are good, and they don't believe so. They believe they're good and everyone else is bad and wrong. And they're going to take away your private property and your ability to feed yourself. And then really, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty of it, in this text, in the law, under section 12E, they say the quiet part out loud. They say that there's going to be a fund established. It's always about money as well as acquiring land and power. So they're going to be taking away, in Oregon, they're going to be taking away subsidies that are given to anyone that is going to be taken out essentially from this. So let's say you're a cattle rancher, or let's say you're a farmer and you receive subsidies of any kind. It looks to me like they don't specify if it's federal subsidies or state subsidies. And I would have to dig into the underpinnings of this law in order to know for sure. But they're going to take away those subsidies and put those into a general fund. I don't know how they're allowed to do this, but that's what they're going to do in the bill. And then that money will be overseen by them and a council of tribal members, which the tribe has nothing to do with this. The tribe is not the one paying taxes. They're not the ones keeping the land good. They're not the ones doing anything, except they've been appointed now by a few to be recipients of taking away other people's land and their ability to feed themselves. So this is about land acquisition, and this is about taking money out of the pockets of many Americans.
You know what's interesting is I didn't know that last part that you were talking about, that they're actually going to use the Indians and reservations to do this. That's very interesting. It's very South Africa. It's exactly actually what they did. The reverse.
Yeah,
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. They're creating a council. And then also, the quiet part out loud is they're going to start rewilding efforts. And this is how it ties into what's going on in Colorado, especially in Southeast Colorado. We're fighting an absolute maniac named Nicole Ross Marino. And she wants to create what's called the American Serengeti, which is basically taking all the land from the eastern plains of Colorado clear to the Dakotas and south. She wants to turn the Great Plains into the American Serengeti, where there's nothing but buffalo roaming wild and free, and wants to take all the ag production out. She's also doing this with Colorado taxpayer dollars. And what they're talking about in Section 12E is an echo of this bill in Oregon, is they're taking this subsidy money and all these other monies that's going to go into a general fund, and they're going to support rewilding efforts as they see fit, and they're going to bring the tribe into a 7-person council.
So this is really interesting. First of all, I doubt there's any federal funding involved in this. This sounds so counter to anything going on with ag and USDA. Brooke Rollins, of course, the secretary over that. I can't imagine that they aren't watching this. And I'm also watching the federal government is pulling every federal dollar they can from states like Colorado and Oregon because of their maniacal behavior, so that they have to use tax funds instead of being able to pull from federal. For example, Linda McMahon today was saying that one of the things they've done with states that are continuing to allow boys into girls sports, and I can see this playing out exactly the same way with states that are doing what you're describing, is they literally have said, we're not giving you anything. You can request a reimbursement afterwards. You're going to use your state money first, and then you can request a reimbursement, because if they're doing this kind of crazy, what you're talking, rewilding and eliminating a person's ability to produce for their own family, that's basic. That's constitutional as far as a person's right to be able to. Well, I mean, it actually is in the first line of our Bill of Rights, the prequel there. You have the right to life, liberty. It used to say property. It should still say property. But the pursuit of happiness, pursuit of production. Production could be put in place of happiness there. A lot of founders wanted that, or later wanted that. But the idea that you are prevented from production based off of false pretenses, never to protect the animals like you're describing, but rather this elitist mission. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because some people really just think that that is a conspiracy, that the elitists they don't really want to get us down to 500,000 people in the whole world, and they don't really care what we're doing. Can you just talk a little more about that? Because literally Colorado is the petri dish. It's literally, Jared Polis wrote a book about it, Hidden Gems. Like, tell us what you know more about that.
Yeah, it's really scary. A lot of people desire, what I said earlier, to become oligarchs, except they don't have the money that actual rich oligarchs have. So what they do is they infiltrate our government agencies, Forest Service, Department of Interior, Parks and Wildlife, various different government agencies that actually, unfortunately, about 2/3 of America is owned by the federal government, especially in the West. The vast majority of our acres in the West are owned by the federal government. It was not designed to be that. Well, so everyone is familiar. Everyone's familiar with oligarchs around the world, but inside our own government agencies in some parts of this country, we have what I've come to refer to as wannabe oligarchs. People who don't have money, but they get jobs inside of some of our government agencies. It's hard to fire someone in the federal government, but they get lifelong careers in the U.S. Forest Service, which is under USDA, or under the Department of Wildlife. They get jobs that last their whole careers there, and then they take federal lands. Unfortunately, 2/3 of America is owned by the federal government, and most of that land is concentrated in the West. We're at a position economically right now where if that land were to be released on the free market, most of the average Americans wouldn't be able to afford to buy that. So we're in this position where we have to take vital and important action against some of these radicals that are inside our own government agencies. Agencies that we pay as American taxpayers to fund. We fund their salaries, and they use the system against us to take our lands. Case in point, in Southeast Colorado, there are 4 efforts going on simultaneously to remove Colorado ranchers and landowners. One of them is they're trying to create.
All right, we're having a little bit of connection trouble, but we're going to have Claire come back on. I think that you've captured a lot of what she's saying there, and the idea that you have these federal employees. 2/3 of our land is federal out there in the West, and their total attempt to control all of it. That's what we have going on in Colorado, and their attempt to control all of it. See, out here in the East, it's all private ownership. You don't have big open public lands. And so they come out to the west where we are, and they want to take all of our public lands. And, or excuse me, they want to take all of our land, period, and they want to own it away from the individuals. They don't want private ownership of these lands at all. And then they want to kick everybody off and not give people access anymore to these lands because they're going to create their weird little safe haven that they're doing. So in light of all of that, and in light of what continues to go on with the federal government, keep this in mind as we're moving forward. Government is not our friend. And when they seek to own and they seek to produce off of the backs of the people, public-private partnerships are my biggest fear. I'm super skeptical of all of them, and everybody should be very, very skeptical of them because they usually plant themselves on a mission that is not a necessity. A lot of them are not necessities. They're not critical infrastructure issues. They're not defense of our country. They're not food supply generated. They're not pharmaceutical supply generated. It's the idea of edible undies on the EBT list. Like, how did that happen? How did edible undies get on the EBT list? EBT, welfare food, basic food that people need to survive. And somebody gets edible undies on there because they couldn't sell it to the general marketplace, but they could pitch it to somebody in government who's going to get 3% on the side. You guys, everything Claire just said is so important. And we're going to have her back on again next week. We're going to keep hammering this while this bill is sitting in Oregon, along with Serena and Right Side Rebel, because it's really critical. Anything that's touching and messing with our food supply, we need to pay attention to. That's not going to go away. Because there is this agenda, as Claire was alluding to, there is an agenda and they want everything we have. I mean, if you go to Europe right now, you realize you have to request, you have to ask permission to move. You can't just like pick up and move somewhere. You have to do written permission to move from one area to another area. If I'm living in Germany, I'm not just picking up and moving. If I live in France, I'm not just picking up and moving. You don't have freedom of movement. And that is a lot of what they're doing to us here. They're trying to corner us in, box us in, so we don't have the freedom to self-determine. But that one last thing I just want to drive home about this bill out of Oregon, the PEACE, P-E-A-C-E Act. If you can't feed your family, and if feeding your family becomes criminal, because again, a lot of Oregon is rural, they're ranchers, farmers, or just good old-fashioned hillbillies out there. And you tell them they can't fish, you're going to have a lot of criminals on your hands. While the bad guys actually go free, it's Gotham. It's Gotham. The bad guys will be running the towns while you lock up all the good people because they went fishing and they dared to gather their chicken eggs. I mean, this is how absurd it gets. Now, the only other thing that kind of concerns me a little bit, I wish I could dialogue with Claire on this, but we'll bring her back in next week. The only thing that continues to concern me is, this is what the left also does. They throw you something that's so crazy and out of left field that you're like, that's so stupid, it will never pass. But then they'll present a lesser version that eventually will get them to the radicalized version. For example, when comprehensive sex education started in the state of Colorado in 2019, I started talking about it. I did a lot of lives. I had people on. I did a lot of national interviews, actually, because they couldn't believe that I was saying in 2019, before Biden took office, obviously, they couldn't believe I was saying that schools were trying to sexualize kids. And I was like, I'm not saying it. This is the material. This is what it is. Comprehensive sex education is they're seriously stimulating and sexualizing children and giving them content I didn't even know till some things I didn't even learn until throughout the course of my married life because it wasn't necessary information until I needed it, right? You don't need to learn this stuff at 6 years old or 13 years old for that matter, or even 17. You don't need to know a lot of this stuff that they were teaching in the comprehensive sex education curriculum, which, by the way, is pretty much in every state across the country. The only place that has really said no firmly is the state of Texas. And even in Texas, these Houston ISD especially continues to try to shove all this disgusting sexualizing content down the throats of children. And it's just so gross. They are, obviously there are deviants. They are deviants, and that's why they're doing it. I don't care how nice they seem. It's weird. It's weird that grown adults want to sit and talk about sexual things with children, with teenagers that are not theirs, that are not their kids, other people's kids. It's so weird. And just, honestly, it's freaky. Okay. You're just a freak if that's what you want to do. And if that's what you're doing. So we started talking about that. And at the time, comprehensive sex education in 2019 was terrible. But it paled in comparison to what comprehensive sex education has become now. I mean, now it's full on. It's full on. They're showing these kids every form of having, of having sex without impregnating somebody. So wrap your mind around that one. They're showing abortions. They're showing videos of actual rape. Like it's played out. It's demonstrated what rape looks like to traumatize these kids in classes. It's just the weirdest thing. I still can't believe this is a reality. It's so weird and so disturbing. And then on top of that, of course, is all the gender identity issues, the transing of children. All of that is about sex. All of that is about who you are going to be having sex with. All of it. None of it serves the children. None of it protects them. None of them helps them have a better life. None of it. In fact, today, Secretary McMahon was talking about one of the critical, pivotal times in her her tenure so far, was meeting with detransitioners of the trans cult. And these adults who met with children, took advantage of their vulnerabilities, encouraged them to pursue this gender ideology. And they had no idea. They said, these kids, they had no idea what it even meant. They just thought it was going to be something kind of fun. You stand out, you're different, you're special, all that. No idea this meant cutting breasts off, chopping off body parts, castrating yourself, never being able to have children now. They had no idea. And then the reality that parents were being completely kept in the dark on purpose, some school districts going so far as to contract with tech companies that would literally hide, as in a second file, a second set of books, hide the name changes these kids were going by. I mean, that is like commitment, like this is a cult. Wow. The lengths that they went to deceive people, to deceive parents, to deceive communities, and really ultimately to deceive these children. When it started out in 2019, comprehensive sex ed, I'm just a shrewd, or I'm a prude, and I just don't understand how much kids, need to know this stuff so they can, say no or whatever, or be protected. But now, I mean, the writing was on the wall where it was always going to go. So when we're talking about this bill, this peace bill, this may not go through, but be watching for something else that the legislature brings forward that will be a mild version that they can build upon. They constantly call it modernizing. If you look at the history of Colorado's bills, how they started out somewhat like horrible, but you're like, we can defeat that. But then they progressively got so much worse. The gun bills, the gun laws, all of those have just gotten so much worse. Property rights, now they're going after Tabor to eliminate the taxpayer bill of rights so that they can tax the people of Colorado into, oblivion. It was very, nuanced, and it was very a little bit at a time, boiling water, right? Throw the frog into the, you don't throw them in the boiling water, you progressively heat it up until it's boiling. And by then you've lost all control and you're just reacting to all of their horrific laws that are criminalizing you now, because you don't think kids should be sexualized, because you think you should be able to go fishing, because you think you should be able to have eggs on your property. You think you should be able to kill the roaches that won't stop terrorizing your household. Well, not in Oregon. So just watch for that, though, because sometimes when it's so outrageous and you're like, that's never going to pass. Well, you're probably right, but they're sneaking something in the back end. And you need to be paying attention to the House and what they're bringing into the House, because there's going to be something, even if this bill doesn't pass, there will be something like this that will start very mild and it will work and ramp itself up under modernization. So it's really baffling. It's really unbelievable. So in our last few minutes, I want to stress once again, I have a crazy update for you guys on what is going on with our tranny case. Just a reminder, October, it's been almost a year now that we've been dealing with these crazies. And yes, he is crazy. He's mentally insane. I don't know what else I can say. We have a restraining order. He has a restraining order against me. So I guess I have to be careful. Anyway, we had a hearing this last week. We finally decided not to argue jurisdiction anymore, even though I live in the state of Texas. I don't live in Colorado, and there's no way I would ever see this man who pretends to be a woman. I would never see him. Never. Actually, I think I've seen him in person at a school board meeting, but never other than that. And so there would be no way for that to happen. Also, the child that was taken by this man also has a restraining order against me. This child is now 18 years old. And, I've never said anything about this child ever, because I believe the child is a victim of this man, this male to female transgender. And I believe that he groomed this child. And I believe that, all the things that we have seen happen with other children have happened with this child. And it's worth noting that this last hearing, there was some serious coercive speech by the judge. And what they're doing in courts, I guess I'm just going to say what they're doing in courts across the country. What they're doing in courts across the country to force people to gender pronoun, however people want to be gender pronoun referred to, is by saying that we are using honorific speech. Write that word down, honorific speech, meaning you will call people in this courtroom Mrs. or Mr. Okay. And so if you have someone who has decided they're a female, but they're actually a man, and they want to be called Mrs. whatever, Mrs. Jane Doe, then the court is mandating that you call them Mrs. Doe. Well, that's a lie. And the reality is, so the judge was very clear that we will be forced to use the titles and names that these people want to be used, even though they are a lie. It's not a Mrs. or it's a Mr. And then the other is a Miss, not a Mr. And they're saying that I will be compelled to use their quote honorific language. I'm just telling you right now, I'm not doing it. I've not been in this whole thing, and just in my life in general, like, you just try not to lie. You just try being honest. And that is a lie. And the crazy part to me, probably the worst part of all of this, is realizing you're in a courtroom where the truth is supposed to prevail. But the court is saying you must lie or you will be sanctioned, or you will be, I don't know, put in jail. Like, I don't know how far the court is going to be willing to go to uphold this honorific language. But this is just foundationally speaking, right? So we're back to the frog in the pot. Speaking, to me, that's boiling. To me, that's the boiling point where you're forcing people to lie in order to support this cult agenda. It shows a bias in the court, in my opinion, out the gate, because I'm literally going to court because I dared to say that this person, this transgender male to female, took somebody's child, which that is a fact. That's not speculation. It's documented in the court. It's completely documented. He took somebody else's child. He compelled a court to give him emergency custody of someone else's child. For why? Because the family wouldn't call the child by this affirmative language, this gender affirming language. And now the court is saying you will call them by this gender affirming language, or you will be sanctioned, or you will be punished. So this is going to get very, very interesting. And I don't know what the court's going to decide. I don't know what the court is going to do. Alliance Defending Freedom has stepped up and is representing me now. They see this as a First Amendment case, which it absolutely is. This male to female transgender can say whatever he wants, does whatever he wants, but he got busted. He got caught taking someone else's kid, and I talked about it, and I shined a light on it. And since that is where I come from, people are listening, and this is retaliation. This whole thing has been retaliation against me for speaking out, for just saying what happened. The court documented, completely verifiable, not defamation, completely factually happened. So that's going to happen July 19th is the next court date. And I'm going to be putting up a lot of media regarding this because I want everybody there. I want everybody to come to Garfield County. I want everybody to come to the court date. It's going to be a long day. I have a feeling it's going to be a long day. And, the thing about it is like, so many of you guys, and being here today with all of these people who have been weaponized against by government. There are so many, by the way, there's so many who unjustly were targeted by the government and have been made to be, examples of the state. And so it's very violating, extremely violating, to believe that a court is going to enforce truth and uphold an unbiased regard for both parties. And that is just not going to happen here. It's not going to happen. It's judicial weaponization all over again, because there is already a bent that the court is not going to ignore. They already have a bent, and they're not going to ignore that. They're not going to set that aside for blind justice. They're not demonstrating that they have the capacity even to just judge the situation as it is. They must include the activist portion of it. And I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. I'd like to be wrong. I want to be wrong on this. However, I think it's going to get very much worse before this is all over, because Colorado is on a trajectory to support and promote the transgender cult, and to promote and support the removal of children from their parents who will not affirm them. So as the DOJ continues to target Colorado and go after them for violating the laws, violating federal law, violating parents' rights, Title IX, this is going to be one area where we're going to really struggle in the state of Colorado. But ADF has been very successful so far in defeating some of this trans cult stuff in the Supreme Court, in supporting freedom of speech and parental rights through the court, and arguing in such a way that the court had to agree with them, even though it's a very liberal Supreme Court, actually, in Colorado too. So it's going to be very interesting, and I'll just keep you guys up to date. I'll be going back to doing lives pretty regularly. I took a little break, and because it's just like gross, you're trying to get on with your life and build and grow and produce and get back to work, and then you have this reality check that these people really believe they can take whatever they want. They can take the truth. They can take your children. They can take what little resources you have, and they believe they can win, and they believe they can destroy you. And so we have to stand up to it. And I want to thank Moms for America, Kimberly Fletcher, Debbie Karlitis, all of our incredible team over there for seeing the value in this. And, I didn't go searching for this at all. The people that I told their story, they fixed my door after the FBI broke my door down. They came and fixed my door so we could shut it, so we could lock it. And this was their child. And I am very glad I told and shared their story, because they deserve that. They're good parents. They do not deserve what has happened to them. And the court, weaponized this trans cult dogma against them and allowed their child to be taken by what I believe is a predator. So on that note, thank you guys for being with us today. I hope this has been invaluable content for you guys, and a direction that you can be focused on, your energy, your thoughts and your prayers, of course, and your voice when it comes time to defeat this type of legislation in your own backyard. Thank you guys for being with us. Remember, all that's necessary for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do absolutely nothing. See you guys next time.